While I was at work, Ramiris and Veldora had apparently been tackling something of their own. Once I got back from my inspection run, they were waiting together to greet me. With those two, it was either a major problem or something they wanted to brag about. This time, it was the latter.
We've done it, Rimuru. We've completed our test unit. If the tests end successfully, we can begin mass-producing them with haste.
And let me tell ya, I'm brimming with confidence about this. Come on, check it out!
I let them hurry me along. Tempest had several research sites in operation by then. One was the public workshop of Kurobi and his apprentices. Much of their research and development would be worthless to thieves unless they also had someone with Kurobi's talents. The special weapons I enlisted them for were an exception, but for the most part we showed off the weapons and armor made there. A little advertising never hurt, and we'd even decided to release the work with a splash, introducing a spring line and everything. Someday I wanted to turn Kurobi and Garm into real established brands. But Ramiris and Veldora were taking me somewhere else. A facility handling research kept classified by the government. We needed a site that was easy to guard and impossible for regular people to wander into, so we put it inside the dungeon. On floor 100 was Tempest's publicly funded research and development center led by Gabiru, along with individual research spaces for Ramiris, Veldora, and me. We had another large facility on floor 95 inside the park established on that level. The Beastman refugees were no longer there, which left us with a huge amount of space, so I figured we might as well use it. We had alchemists from Dwargon, sorcerous researchers from Thalion, and vampire researchers from Lubelius with too much time on their hands all gathered in Tempest, and we needed a large-scale facility to house them. Each group brought its own specialized talents. The Dwarven alchemists were gifted in spirit engineering, the field that birthed the magic armor soldier project Taijin and Vester were once involved with. In this world, natural phenomena were thought of as tied to the spirits, the 5 base elements of earth, water, fire, wind, and air, and the 3 higher elements of light, dark, and time. Science that harnessed those phenomena, and the technological systems built around them, were known as spirit engineering. It formed the mainstream of scientific thinking around here. Our visitors from Thalion, meanwhile, were schooled in the largely concealed field of sorcerous science, a scholarly realm only those who truly mastered magic could reach. Its core fundamentals were proposed by the Thalion Emperor Elmesia's mother, a genius elven researcher, and her teachings had since been inherited and replicated by a great many people. The field even ventured into the philosophical, exploring just how far one could wrangle magic to change the world and its natural laws. It was the sort of thing Diablo would love. Its real value, though, was in forcing certain alterations to pre-existing phenomena, which in turn helped advance spirit engineering. You needed to be a true expert in elemental magic to even begin understanding it, but the potential benefits went without saying. Thalion also kept it strictly confidential, of course. Revealing its secrets to other nations was forbidden. Finally, there were the vampires I had accepted after my promise to Luminous. These were overcomers, vampires powerful enough to be deemed calamity-level threats, and they were all rather eccentric characters. At least there weren't many of them. I had very real concerns they'd cause me trouble, but it turned out I shouldn't have worried. One of the vampires greeted me with manic enthusiasm. Hey, Sir Rimuru! Let me tell you how curious we are about all the fun stuff in here, man. He was my main contact among them, an extremely cheerful, affable man. They just loved new things. None of them minded humans or elves or dwarves among their co-workers. Not when they had that much intellectual curiosity to satisfy. Some of them came off as pretty arrogant, but Veldora and Ramiris worked alongside them. And while Ramiris was never going to serve as a decent authority figure, her servants Beretta and Trainee weren't about to stand for it. Anyone too arrogant for their tastes got less than royal treatment. One vampire would bark, "Yo, get me some tea, girl."
Yes, right away, sir.
Then the same fool would groan, "Man, work took a lot out of me today. My shoulders are killing me."
Oh, let me massage them, sir.
And these were the overcomers? Eesh. Their leader could only grumble. Those damned fools, pathetic. But nobody dared lodge a complaint at Veldora or Ramiris. After that, the vampires became much more cooperative. Their research, meanwhile, was actually pretty interesting. They were taking the opposite approach from sorcerous science, something Luminous dismissed as useless, but I disagreed. On Earth, we'd call their field physical engineering. They were trying to discover the rules of nature with all the magical elements stripped away. The laws of physics they produced from that, laid out in intricate detail, were the heart of their science. This was all totally reproducible work. Still, in a world where the degree of magic in an area can affect things differently, it wound up treated as a fringe field. Luminous disliked it, which I found interesting in itself. Even if all this data gathering was just a pastime for a bunch of bored vampires, their massive archives were immensely useful to me. They made it easier to examine the effects of magic. Any great new breakthrough is the product of a number of smaller ones, so I never thought their research deserved revulsion. So now I had teams of leading experts in a variety of intellectual fields inside my nation. The information they brought was invaluable, and the potential results when you mixed them together were incalculable. Tempest's task was to secure their safety and comply with any secrecy requirements tied to their results. To handle that, I had all researchers wear special Ramiris-crafted bracelets. They were basically unlimited-use resurrection bracelets that also provided communications and teleportation within the labyrinth, although only between the research facility and the surface. Confidentiality was bound to inconvenience a lot of researchers, so I figured that freebie would help. None of them could leave Floor 95 without teleporting, and their data was recorded whenever they did so, preventing leaks. They could also ask a dryad to teleport them, but that required trainees' approval, so any spy activity in the labyrinth would be doomed from the start. Of course, I figured the overcomers had an honest chance of fighting their way down the normal route, but it'd be inherently dangerous. Not even I knew every trap laid throughout the place. I doubted even a talented team of vampires would find it a cakewalk. We kept tabs on their movements anyway, so we could tail them if they tried anything and capture them once the labyrinth hopefully slowed them down. We had such draconian measures in place for a good reason. Angels apparently descend to attack advanced civilizations in this world, and that was a big part of it. Ramiris's labyrinth couldn't be a better safeguard. Even an angel attack could be kept away from Floor 95. If worst came to worst, Ramiris bragged she could just update the dungeon and swap Floor 95 out with Floor 99. This city and facility in the labyrinth's deepest recesses was the safest spot in all of Tempest. Keeping it fully isolated was the best way to stop classified leaks and protect the people living there. Floor 95 provided the most extensive services my nation had to offer, and I thought it'd be more than enough to satisfy anyone working there. By the way, our former main research site in the sealed cave was closed off now. After multiple rounds of Hippocute cultivation, the concentration of magicals in the herbs had started to dip. They were still high quality, but we expected the yields to keep trending downward. So we changed cultivation sites. Really, we just devoted a section of Floor 93's flower gardens to Hippocute growth, raising the magical count to encourage sudden mutations among the weeds. Gabiru's lab had already moved to Floor 100 as well, which made things more convenient for him. The shuttered cave was now populated by wyverns, accessing the site from an expanded tunnel extending to the mountain's rear side. That was classified as a military secret, more or less, so the public wasn't allowed anywhere near it. From here on out, all top-level research would be done in the labyrinth. It was this large-scale facility on Floor 95 that the two of them guided me to. We didn't head for one of their private rooms, which told me this was the result of collaborative work with the others. Work on the test unit was going well, apparently, as was the related research. They even said it'd be done before our rail lines opened up. I hadn't been down to Floor 95 in a while, and in the meantime it had transformed into a kind of forest city. It wasn't a normal crawler floor anymore. In the middle of a beautifully kept park, a whole townscape had sprung up among the trees. I was impressed at how quickly they'd done it, though I was sure we were seeing some elven ingenuity at work. Maybe the treants had a hand in it too. Either way, it was a lovely place. Transient labyrinth challengers, of course, couldn't come in here unless they were studly enough to hack and slash their way through the long route. I personally took advantage of the members-only elf club from time to time, but I almost never came here during the day, so I hadn't realized it had changed this much. I left its development wholly in the hands of Veldora and Ramiris, and I had to admit I liked their work. It gave the deeper levels some variety, and I'd love to take a leisurely tour sometime. That was on my mind as I followed them toward a modern research building made of reinforced concrete and standing out within the park in the middle of the city. Next to it stood a larger building with one whole block devoted to accommodations for visiting researchers. I had directed the construction of that building myself, but now for some reason it had this natural, weathered look to it. It gave off a really unique presence, and I didn't mind it at all. I said, "Very charming. I like how it's kind of nestled among the trees."
Right? Every research lab needs to look like it houses a dragon's hoard of secrets.
Veldora patted himself on the back like a kid showing off his secret treehouse hideout. I had no idea what, or who, gave him such a skewed view of the world.
Everyone's getting along so well in there these days. You know, there was talk about forming a kind of secret society.
A secret society? What were these people even doing in there?
Hee. You're the one who blew the lid open on all their research first, aren't you, Rimuru? That sure took care of anyone looking to steal people's data and make it their own.
Ah yes, that did happen. There were a lot of walls between nations and plenty of clashes of opinion among the world's scientists. Most researchers, keeping their homeland's interests in mind, concealed their tech while trying to absorb some from their rivals. I didn't see that as constructive, so I just laid bare everything we knew. The word classified didn't mean anything to Raphael anyway. So I collated all of it into easy-to-grasp instruction manuals for the public and passed out copies, burning through all the valuable paper Yuki had procured for me. Maybe that was a little wasteful, but I thought it was justified. I really wanted to manage our documents with proper plant fiber paper instead of parchment. The stuff Yuki gave me had apparently come from the Empire, and it was almost as good as what I had on Earth. Handing it all away felt like the best demonstration possible of just how serious we were. I reminded Ramiris, right, I put all that secret information into written documents so anyone could browse through it. There were, a few complaints, but I think it's going to do a lot to advance technology.
Oh, it will! And it has, Rimuru! There was kind of a big commiseration party after that dropped, and everybody hit it off with one another.
As Ramiris explained it, once everyone gave up on concealing their data and started working with others, a weird sort of solidarity formed across the lab. Since then, they had stopped obsessing over their home nations so much. Even the overcomer vampires were treated as friends and equals now. It was genuinely fascinating to see, and I liked it. That part was great. What came after was the problem. The researchers were now their own little community, with Veldora and Ramiris at the top. And thanks to that, the community had become an organized group. It was a mysterious environment where everyone could research whatever they wanted to their heart's content. Exactly the kind of evil little secret society we had going. Ramiris, boundlessly fascinated by all this, had become the mascot/head cheerleader. Veldora, meanwhile, was positioned more like a mafia boss. At first I grumbled about it. I look away for one moment and this happens. But then it dawned on me that if I'd been around, it probably would have happened even faster. Wait. Nuh-uh, it wouldn't have, I swear.
So anyway, here's how we've arranged the externals of it.
What do you think? Cool, eh? Like a villain's secret hideout?
Oh god, it really was a secret hideout. A lot of Veldora's knowledge came from things regenerated from my memories, especially manga and the like, so no wonder I recognized the vibe at a glance. I grumbled. Look at you guys having all this fun without me?
Quahaha. Let me assure you, we are only getting started. We'll likely need to tap into your intellect shortly, you see.
That's right, Rimuru! You're always surprising us, so now it's our turn. Let's show you what we've been working on, and then I want to hear your feedback.
Veldora laughed at my completely honest complaint, and Ramiris at least pretended to sympathize with me. If they were talking it up that much, I couldn't exactly keep pouting, so I pulled myself together and stepped into the lab. People in white coats restlessly beavered away all around us. I passed by them as we came to what looked like a model train. Kaijin, of all people, was standing there in a lab coat that did not suit him in the slightest. He threw up a hand and called out, "Hey boss, surprise!" He seemed to be running things around here. The space, about the size of a college lecture hall, was lined with rails so densely that you had to watch where you stepped. There were miniature mountains, valleys, tunnels. Maybe they were doing aerodynamic analysis or something. I asked, "Wow, this entire space is a test facility?" Kaijin nodded with a grin. "Uh-huh. Way to get it on the first guess. But what's really amazing are all the people gathered in Tempest for this. It ain't easy to build a facility this size." He was right. This only worked because so many scientists were gathered under one roof. They had used assorted types of magic to create the massive diorama before us, and the precision-crafted model riding the rails had been made by Kaijin himself. I asked him, "What's propelling this train?" Kaijin replied with an easy smile, "Steam." That made sense. For the moment, the only practical way to drive a train was with horses, which was what we had pulling the cargo carriers currently using the highway rails. That only let you move the same weight you could load into a carriage, of course. The rails improved safety and helped with traffic management, but I couldn't say they made transport dramatically more efficient. There had been proposals to use golems or monsters to pull them instead, but that was still just a stopgap. We really needed engines, and steam engines were our top candidate. Not, of course, the kind from olden times that burned coal or anything like that. We'd conceived something that took the best parts of magic and science together. That was the whole reason I called it a Magitrain. The concept called for an engine that applied magic, driven by magicule energy to the combustive energy created by steam. It was a kind of template for magical cores, and simple as it sounded, it still required some very high-level magic tech. Magic and natural phenomena worked on different principles. You could use magic to create the effect you wanted, but it was hard to derive a standard rule set from it. Say you had a candle burning inside a sealed glass container. The oxygen would soon be replaced with carbon dioxide, and the flame would go out. But if the flame had been created by magic, it would keep burning forever. As long as the force and magicules invested by the caster didn't run out, the flames wouldn't disappear, even if no caster actually had infinite power. That alone showed that magical flames ran on different rules from scientific phenomena. It was difficult to take one magical procedure and apply it successfully to something else. That, I figured, was why nobody in this world had thought about connecting magic to physics before now. Spirit magic was different. When you borrow the power of spirits, the result isn't shaped by the caster's image in the same way elemental magic is. Spirit magic has to conform to the laws of nature. Flames driven by spirit magic still consume oxygen and still produce carbon dioxide. When I fought Ifrit, Great Sage taught me a thing or two about steam explosions, and that trick only worked because Ifrit's flames obeyed similar natural laws. If they'd been elemental magic instead, rewriting those laws with magicules, the trick might have been completely useless. It was also why I could still use spirit magic inside that holy field. Back in the past, I had used inscription magic to heat metal and illuminate caves, but in the end it still didn't produce enough light. Dole did a little innovating there, applying the elemental magic light and changing the inscription so it transformed magicules directly into illumination. Basically, this world let you use magic to skip the procedure and go straight to the result. The downside was that it delayed scientific investigation into natural phenomena. Science based on physical laws was better handled using spirit magic, which itself followed nature. That was how I hit on the idea of spirit-based engines in the first place. Kaijin gave me an impressed look. We'd been using the heat we generate in the forge to do things like warm-up baths, you know? But not even I thought you could use steam this way. Honestly, I was more impressed that he'd taken my vague description and built a steam engine from it. So I told him, well, the basic premise can be used for a lot of things. Moving pistons, turning turbines, you know? Using steam or heat energy can help you do physical work, or you can convert it into electricity. The latter's something to tackle later, but it looks like you've worked out pistons just fine for now. Kaijin turned back toward the miniature train. Yeah, as you can see, boss, you can get a lot of power from electricity if you use it right. I had spoken to Kaijin and his team about electricity before. They must have kept at it because now he demonstrated a pretty solid understanding of the subject. Maybe even a better one than mine. There were 6 cars connected to the model locomotive, each filled with little metal balls. If they had been full size, that would have been a pretty hefty load.
We tried to replicate every possible environment in this test room. Right now it's in a tropical rainforest. In the next space over there's a desert climate, and next to that is an area with heavy snowfall. We're getting data from each room so we can make designs for pretty much any environment.
Trainee was the one explaining matters now, with Ramiris taking the opportunity to perch on her shoulder. A vampire with canines gleaming in the light nodded eagerly. Yes, yes, glad we could be of service. I just love experiments like this. The vampire leader was a cheerful sort of man, but definitely off-kilter. It wasn't that he enjoyed research so much as there simply wasn't room in his mind for anything else. Still, I was sure they were helping a lot. I had been given a carefully kept notebook filled to the margins with writing. It was pulp-based paper. We could have imported paper like this from the Eastern Empire if we had diplomatic relations, but we didn't, so I'd assigned people to research how to create proper paper ourselves. Gabiru's team excelled at that kind of non-headline-grabbing work, and once I left it to them, they quickly started test-producing low-quality sheets from tree pulp. I hadn't given them any further instructions after that, but through trial and error they had quickly reached this current level of quality. They had samples to work from, and documentation from me outlining the process, but it was still amazing. They deserved praise and I resolved to give it to them. But back to the notebook. It was a neat piece of work, a running series of questions, hypotheses, experiments, and results. Dynamic force and the magicules needed for an engine to provide it, consecutive operation times and how the engine deteriorated afterward. Estimates on maximum load and weight distribution on the freight cars. They had even used all of that to calculate the stability of each room's setup and figure out how fast they could safely run the trains. All of that data would be invaluable when building full-size locomotives. I only skimmed the notebook, but it seemed to me like the necessary theoretical work was already done. We had a working model after all, so I figured it was time to build a test engine. Unless? I looked over at Veldora and asked, "Hey, Veldora, this isn't the only test vehicle you've built so far, is it?"
Well spotted. You're an intelligent slime if you've already noticed.
Veldora grinned at me with Ramiris sneering on his shoulder. Then I looked around and realized Kaijin and his team, Trainee, and even Beretta had all lined up by one of the doors. So this means... Kaijin started walking us through it. It was a lot of hard work, you know. Summoning a fire spirit within the engine wasn't enough. You need something for power control, and if it was all manual, you'd need a decently trained shaman riding the train at all times. We could train enough of those for a whole fleet maybe, but that'd take too much time. So they put together a magic circuit that automates the whole thing. It's a control board that combines the fire spirit core and the inscription magic that controls it. Put them together and this is what you get. As he slowly approached the door, I thought back to how every earlier attempt had failed at the same point. Summoning spirits was always where things started falling apart. Lower-level spirits simply didn't have enough power. You needed at least a mid-level summon, something like a flame salamander. Those were B+ monsters, and no normal person could summon one and keep it stable for long. Was Ramiris involved in that? As the former spirit queen, it seemed right up her alley. But I held my tongue and watched Kaijin place his hand on the door. I breathed out. Whoa. This is it. Waiting beyond the door was a body of lustrous black, clearly made of magisteel and looking like some ominous beast of iron. Vester's proud voice rang out from beside it. Here is the result of our combined skills, Magitrain Zero. I had thought we were still in the experimental stage and the thing was already done. Still just a test unit perhaps, but the first realization of the train I'd always dreamed of. It was a huge step forward. Vester quickly went on. We're planning to test the body's durability and performance. We're also going to add not just freight cars, but passenger cars, sleepers, and even dining rooms. Kaijin added, completing the steam engine isn't the end of the story, of course. I still want to get into the nitty-gritty and make this as complete a package as possible. Vester and Kaijin were both excited. The other researchers looked just as impassioned as they stared at Magitrain Zero. But I was sure there was still room for improvement. Vester admitted, for example, regarding the electricity you discussed with us, that's some pretty tricky stuff to handle. We had a wind spirit generate lightning for us, but harnessing that energy as is looks like a non-starter. He wasn't wrong. Electricity could do practically anything, but only if you handled it the right way. Vester continued, "We need to develop capacitors first. Once we do, we can use the heat the steam engine generates to create electricity. It'll be a lot easier to operate a train then, so I think it's a worthwhile approach." This was all a little over my head, but Raphael had kindly translated technical books from Earth into the local language for me. I'd already handed those over to the lab, and apparently Vester's team was making good use of them. It was sort of like recycling magic. If it made things smoother for all of us, then bring it on. Kaijin scratched his cheek and said, "Oh, and about that, I wasn't sure whether to say it when it came up, but I thought we could discuss it while looking inside this guy. A picture's worth 1,000 words, as they say. Come on in." Wait, were they already using electricity somehow? I followed Kaijin inside and found another surprise waiting for me. The inside of the locomotive was bathed in a soft, gentle light. I shot him a questioning stare. Kaijin grinned. "We readied ourselves for this the moment you gave us all those books, boss. Right, Vester?" Vester answered with the kind of earnest pride only a researcher could manage. "Yes, Sir Rimuru. Ever since you tasked us with researching ways to use electricity, Kaijin and I have been poring through all the materials. There were still things we hadn't grasped inside them, but with this many scientists gathered together, I thought we could get some help from them." Kaijin jabbed a thumb over his shoulder. "Right, that sort of thing. So they helped find answers to our questions. Plus, when we looked at that girl over there, Lady Ramiris's elemental colossus, that is, it just blew our minds. After all, it's basically a completed version of the magic armor soldier project we had abandoned. Certainly, having a real example to work from made things easier to understand. The new elemental colossus under construction was already serving as an experimental test bed, apparently." Vester nodded. "Very much so. Reading those books and getting valuable feedback from everyone else made us realize our great mistake. Back then, we thought spirit magic and elemental magic were the same thing during our experiments. That's where we went wrong." Kaijin followed immediately after. "Yeah, so we looked at the sample to verify what we were missing. What they found was that different kinds of magic could run by completely different rules. Ramiris's elemental colossus ran on spirit magic, or more specifically, it used a summon spirit. Kaijin's team had been trying to operate a spirit core with elemental magic, and they simply couldn't get it started." Vester admitted it without flinching. "Our answer to this, unfortunately, was to increase the magic output. That led to magic-generated heat with nowhere to go, and the experiment ended in failure." I got it. Then again, maybe the Colossus was arranged like this only because Ramiris couldn't use elemental magic. Regardless, that turned out to be the key to its success. The Colossus was driven by a primitive sort of spirit core, but with all the scientists gathered here, they were apparently on their way to restoring its full abilities. Once they fully analyzed the master core I had created for it, it'd be a full-fledged magic core again. Vester let out a tired little laugh. I don't know whether to be happy or sad about this. Kaijin laughed back at him. Me neither. Here's this theory I gave up on, and we only failed because we had an assumption wrong. It was the sort of thing that shows no sign of working no matter how hard you reason it out, and then suddenly everything clicks the moment one misunderstanding is cleared away. At that point, all Kaijin could do was laugh. Kaijin spread his hands toward the core assembly. Right? So if we have a magic core, we can convert magicules to energy, although this energy comes in several types too. It's hard to explain simply. Vester picked up the thread. This locomotive converts magicules into heat energy to work a turbine. It can also generate electricity, as you said, Sir Rimuru, so that's why we can light each car so brightly. That really did surprise me. This car was driven by a completed magic core. Feed magicules to the assorted spirits involved, and you gain the ability to convert them into usable energy. You could even circulate that energy around the system. Electricity generated by the turbine could be fed back into the magic core and stored for later use. I had assumed they could generate electricity more directly, but apparently that made the whole thing harder to control, so they designed the system around electricity produced by the steam engine instead. When it comes to electricity, raw output isn't all that matters. You also need a power plant, a transformer, and storage batteries to hold the energy. They were handling all of that with nothing but a magic core. On top of that, the fuel magicules were already floating through the air, and if that wasn't enough, you could just use a magic stone as backup. The actual running time depended on the available magicules, but in a rich environment and without particularly aggressive operation, the thing could run almost forever outside of maintenance downtime. Truly, it was a miracle power source.
Well, Rimuru, surprised?
Even we can do stuff like this when we get serious.
I hated to encourage Veldora and Ramiris when they were in full bragging mode, but it really was amazing. Credit where credit was due. So I told them, this is really great. Keep up the good work, guys.
Certainly.
It's smooth sailing from here on out.
They knew they were being complimented, and now I wanted to brag to someone myself. It wouldn't be long before our nation had a train system, and after that, our Magitrains would start sweeping across the world. It was exciting to imagine. Kaijin cleared his throat. So, boss, there's something I wanted to discuss. I turned back to him. Oh? What's that? Kaijin gave me the look of a man pretending this was only business. Well, we wanted to hold a friendly icebreaker to celebrate the completion of Magitrain Zero, and along those lines, a massive all-out drinking bash in the name of a friendly icebreaker, and at my favorite nightclub too, of course. Well, fine. I gave in. Perfect. All right, everyone, let's drink out the rest of the evening. Kaijin flashed me a relieved smile. Aw, thanks, boss. I know you sponsor that fancy tavern, so I couldn't go around reserving it just for ourselves. He had a point. It wasn't really the kind of place I'd invite busloads of friends to party in. In fact, I doubted everyone here could even fit inside. Even for Kaijin, money wasn't necessarily the issue. So I adjusted the plan on the spot. Well, how about I have them set up some outdoor seating? We can close it off to the public for tonight and call it a staff appreciation event. Given how well everyone already worked together, icebreaker was a misnomer. So I decided to cover the bill for a party to thank them for their efforts. Honestly, any excuse was fine by me. There's no better way to celebrate than with good drink. Whether it's a small get-together or a big company event, as long as people spend time together, it's all the same. And what luck. We just happened to be in an elf-run town that felt like paradise on Earth. Time for everyone to share in the joy and recharge for the future.
How understanding of you.
The staff answered in chorus. We can't wait, Sir Rimuru. They were just as excited as Veldora, and they thanked me in unison like they'd practiced it. Even the vampires enjoyed alcohol. I guess not needing fresh blood had widened their palates a bit. Then, right in the middle of the celebration.
This is so great. Now I can drink on someone else's coin too.
Yes, it's quite wonderful, isn't it? But be careful you don't drink too much.
Before Trainee could finish, Beretta cut in with absolute seriousness. None of that, Lady Ramiris. Sir Rimuru told me that underage drinking is strictly prohibited. A certain pipsqueak tried to seize the moment to wet her whistle, but she was thankfully stopped in time.
Route confirmed. The next episode and full playlist are ready.
Then don't stop here. Keep watching in story order and subscribe before the next part drops.